Welcome, everybody, to the third week of this year's Women of Fantasy Football event. I'm Joshua Hudson with Club Fantasy's No Punt Intended. We've got a monstrous show today. If you don't know who these women are that we're bringing on today, I don't know what to do for you. But we have ESPN's Stephania Bell, Fox NFL and Fox reporter Laura Okmin coming on with us. We're going to talk all things football, how they got started in their careers, where they're going. And we're announcing the winners of our signed Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor jerseys. Stay tuned.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome again, like Josh just said, to No Pun Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. Week 3 of Women of Fantasy Football. And if you have either been watching Club Fantasy or No Pun Intended for a while, or our Women of Fantasy Football shows, two things look a little different to you right now. One, if you watch No Pun Intended, the boys are gone and the women have taken over for the month. And two, if you've been watching our Women of Fantasy Football shows, you will notice that Stepmom Lauren is missing. She was feeling a little under the weather and decided that it was better for her to just relax and heal. So, Lauren, we miss you. We love you. We wish you were here. But Stephania Bell, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. It's so exciting to have you here.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me. Perhaps you can hear that squeaking in the background. Rico has made his presence known. My dog Rico. He's squeezing a football. This is a stuffed football. So I think he's actually trying to make a relevant point, but I don't know what it is. So I apologize that there's going to be some intermittent squeaks probably happening.
Oh my goodness. It's
always
so
right
fun
when we start these things.
Oh, of course.
So,
Absolutely.
I'll take it away from him if it gets too obnoxious, but I do apologize. I think he's just mad because it's football season and I'm kind of busy, so he doesn't get much time to play with me. And I think he's resorted to picking up this stuff football, thinking maybe that will be the thing that gets me back. So
negative attention is better than none at all.
That's right.
What kind of dog is
Lauren? Shout out to Lauren, Stepmom Lauren. I hope that she feels better soon. I'm sorry not to see her on the show, but take care and get better, and we'll see you soon.
Yes. What kind of dog is Rico? Because I know the people want to know.
Rico is a rescue, so we don't know exactly what he is. He is. There's an organization that rescues street dogs from Puerto Rico, and that's where he's from. So he was found on the street when he was about 4 months old, looking for food with his little brother. And I don't know what happened to his brother because when he came through the organization, he was brought up solo. They named him Rico, so I thought it was appropriate, and I let it stick. I adopted him when he was 7 months old, and he just turned 2. Although we haven't celebrated his birthday yet, but that's coming. He has a big box from Chewy, but I've been on the road, so we haven't been able to celebrate it yet.
That's probably why he's also mad, because he knows it's his birthday, and he's like, "Excuse me, Mom, where are my presents?"
I know.
I deserve all the things.
He gets presents on the regular, and he had a bout with heartworm. It was very difficult for 6 months. Something they think he probably contracted as a baby in Puerto Rico, and the treatment is very tough, but he's through it and he's better. And so he got spoiled a lot by people who cared to send him gifts and kind of wish him well, and I appreciate that. But now he's just all about playing.
He's living his best life, living it up in Connecticut.
Yeah, I know. He has no idea how much better Connecticut is than Puerto Rico for him. In his case,
Connecticut's better than a lot of places.
Everyone asks me if he's bilingual, and I'm like, I believe that he is. So
he barks in 2 languages.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So, tell us about your journey. How did you go from working as a physical therapist to transitioning to working at ESPN with all of that knowledge?
It's a long story, so I'll try and give you sort of the Reader's Digest version. I've got it down somewhat to a science, but I think it really came from fantasy football. It's where it came from. And yes, obviously the background in physical therapy. I worked in orthopedics and sports for years. And by the time I transitioned full-time to ESPN, I'd probably been working as a PT in that arena for about 20 years. So a lot of experience with athletes recovering from various injuries, a lot of the injuries that we see. I worked with D1 athletes when I was at KU. I worked with youth athletes when I was in California. So I've run the gamut from youth all the way up to professional. And, just like you're explaining things to your patients all the time, because PTs, one of the things about being a PT is you tend to spend a lot more time with your patients than a lot of the other healthcare providers that they might see, because when they come in to rehab for an injury, they're coming in a couple of times a week for multiple weeks, especially if it's something long-term like an ACL. And so you're answering their questions over and over about, how long is it going to take to get back and what can they expect, et cetera. So I got used to having to go through explanations for lay people, and they were the patients, and they always wanted comparisons. And one of the things you find is a lot of these athletes who are recovering, they look to stories of other athletes. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
It's easy. But they look to other athletes, and they would identify with the pros. They'd be like, oh, so-and-so had this injury. It kind of would inspire them to get back. And then combine that with the fact I was playing fantasy football, and there wasn't much injury information at the time. I mean, you're talking a long time ago, and not everything was on the internet. The internet was fairly new. And so people, were still doing box scores with the newspaper. And even though fantasy drafts were starting to be online, there wasn't a lot of the available information like you see now. And you could find out nothing about injuries. So if you knew what an injury was, maybe all you would know is that somebody sprained their MCL, but there would be nothing about it. And so a lot of people in my league would come to me and ask me questions about the injuries. What is it? What does it mean? How long is the guy going to be out? And that's what gave me the idea that, hey, maybe this is something that I could parlay into a part-time gig. I mean, that's what I thought initially. And as I started writing about it and talking about it, and I got little windows here and there on the internet, and then I joined RotoWire, and they gave me a more prominent place with their staff. I'll always be grateful to them, and wrote for the magazine and did Sirius XM radio. It just kind of caught on that this injury analysis was a thing. And about that time, Matthew Berry had just gone to ESPN, and he and I had met at a couple of FSTA trade meetings, and it's FSGA now, but it was FSTA then. And, he thought I had a unique background. There weren't that many women who were playing fantasy football. There's certainly far more women now than there were at the time when I was starting. And he thought it would be a good fit for the department that he was trying to build. So I owe Matthew Berry a lot for bringing me in. And it just kind of all started with us not knowing anything about what we were doing. I mean, we created a podcast the first year I was there, and it's now the longest running original podcast on ESPN, which is amazing. And we're so very grateful that it's still around. And we dabbled in this internet show called Fantasy Football Now, which came to you live on the internet every Sunday. And it got an Emmy for innovation in the sports Emmys.
Wow.
And so that was like, after a year, I was like, wow, well, if they get rid of me now, I can at least say we won an Emmy like that. They can't take that away. So it was really cool to see how fantasy was treated by ESPN. And really it was through the vision of one executive in particular who really saw that fantasy had a place to grow and thought it would be a good fit for ESPN. And eventually our show made it to TV, and now we've got a 3-hour show on Sundays, and podcast is gone from just being this little audio podcast that I didn't even know how to tell people what a podcast was because I didn't understand it. I was like, well, we're in this radio studio and we record it like it's a radio show, but then it's edited, but then you have to go find it on the internet. And it was so now podcasts, there's so many, right? It's everybody's doing them. And we didn't know what we were creating. And that was part of the beauty of it, really, was we had fun with it. And we just developed this loyal following, which has been awesome, because now that we've been able to do these live shows, obviously with COVID, we haven't done them recently, but through those live shows, we were able to get out and meet some of these people who'd been listening to us for years, and through their loyalty helped create this following that has really helped us build fantasy. I think not only for ESPN, but I think the visibility that came from having fantasy featured on ESPN helped establish fantasy football and fantasy sports in general as something that was to be taken seriously, and a lot of the other networks joined on.
So long story short there, everybody, even if you don't know what you're doing, you too could end up like Stephania Bell and Matthew Berry, because as told by Stephania herself, they didn't know what they were doing when they started. So you too can start there. So I see Stepmom Lauren in the chat, and Stepmom Lauren has a question that she started with last year that she literally asks everybody. So in honor of her, what is your biggest pet peeve or the thing that annoys you the most about social media? Whether it's how a trend or how people react to something. One of our guests last year said choreographed dances. It can be anything.
Now mine is more philosophical than that. I just think it's the negative aspect of it, right? I just don't have room, and so I used to really like agonize over blocks, and I agonize not at all anymore. I just use that button as much as I want, because I think that Twitter in particular to me is one of the most powerful, because of the fact that one of the things I like about it is I can share things that I find, and really for me that had to do initially with the work of my colleagues. So if somebody wrote an article and I thought it was really good, I could immediately put it out there, and it might reach people who followed me who didn't necessarily follow the person that wrote it. And I thought that was really powerful. And for my particular line of work, what it helped me do was if there was something in the medical literature, which people might not normally see, and not everyone's going to sit down and read an article in the American Journal of Sports Medicine, but the abstracts are pretty accessible, usually, to a degree. And if there was something where I thought, hey, this might be interesting to people who follow the show, because we're talking about, I don't know, high ankle sprains, and there's this article that's been published that shows X, Y, or Z is, the amount of time average it takes to come back for NFL players from this. If I share it on Twitter, I can bring it to an audience that is never going to be otherwise looking at American Journal of Sports Medicine material. And you can actually expand information delivery that way. So I loved it for that. And then came the negative, which I didn't anticipate. I didn't, we were all new to Twitter when we started. And I think the comfort of people to say and do things from a hidden space, when 9 times out of 10, if they ran into you on the street, they would not say or do those things.
Oh, absolutely.
Even if they say they would, they wouldn't. They just wouldn't. Although, I don't know, lately it seems people are more confrontational. Maybe they would now, but for the most part, they wouldn't. And so I felt like that was an unfortunate consequence of everybody having license to say whatever they wanted on social media, because it does intimidate people from participating. And that's unfortunate, because there's a lot of good exchange that can happen there. And, we depend on it. Obviously, it's part of branding, it's part of getting your product out. But I actually think it serves this bigger purpose of potentially lifting up other people who people might not know about, just try and raise the profile a little bit, or bringing information from one area of practice to another, or one audience to a completely different one. And those are the things that I love about it. So to me, the thing that is my biggest pet peeve is that the negative stuff tends to dominate. And even when you develop a thicker skin and you're used to having to siphon that out, it gets taxing after a while. It really does. So if I could eliminate, I'm not talking about difference of opinions, because I think civil discourse, I'm all about it. Like, I think it's good to disagree and engage in positive ways. But if there's negative and name calling and that sort of, I'm just not into that. at all. So, Rico's decided he needs to go out. What great timing. That's awesome.
Rico has decided that he is over the negativity as well. I agree with healthy confrontation is necessary because everybody's going to have different opinions. But like you said, it's when somebody doesn't want to either defend their opinion or can't defend their opinion, that they just resort to name calling or whatever. It's like, okay, you've legitimately lost all credibility. I don't even know what you said in the beginning. It could have been a great point, but from point A to point B, now the only thing that people are going to think about you is what they most recently saw, which was your negativity, your snarkiness, your reply. And so it's just not, if you're trying to build your brand, it's not a good way for people to remember you. You want them to remember you for the good reasons, for your knowledge, for your positivity. But it's kind of like that whole one bad apple spoils the bunch thing. One tweet in 3 months worth of work can destroy you.
Yeah, and I think, and that's also the part that's too bad about it. I've spoken to a lot of younger PTs who have asked me about getting into this space or, how I deal with social media in particular. And I just said, the thing that's hard, and I didn't get into this media business till I was, halfway through my career life. And so I came to it at a different point. I don't envy the people who come in younger. It's hard. I don't know if I'm just glad it wasn't around when I was that young. But I think the way I choose to engage with it is just to focus on things that are primarily positive. Still have an opinion, but to focus on things that are primarily positive and tend to focus on the folks in my, circle, as it were, on social media who are willing to engage that way as well.
And I mean, I think it's important for people to remember that you and I can disagree on something, and it's okay to disagree. Agree to disagree and move on. Not everything needs to be an argument about why I'm right and you're wrong, or vice versa. Like, it's
if
okay.
anybody watches our podcast, they would understand, or listen to our podcast. It feels weird to say watch it because it's a podcast. It's primarily an audio platform, but now ours is a video platform as well. So anybody who watches or listens to our show will know that we have healthy disagreements all the time. But to that end, I think it's constructive because it would be boring if we always agreed on things.
Agree.
About what we believe. So it's okay to have those disagreements and to be able, and I think, it's good to be able to defend your case. If you can't defend it, then maybe your point isn't that great to begin with. And we do this to each other all the time. But I think one of the things we try to do is to circle back within the banter, and there's laughter, and people know that we have this great affection for each other on the show, the four of us, me, Field, Daniel, and Matthew. But we will have healthy disagreements all the time, and we have our biases. I'm a homer for the 49ers. Daniel's insane about the Lions. Matthew knows nothing but good things about and Field's the only one who doesn't have a team that he's loyal to, and that's only because he worked in a front office, and he learned to shed that a long time ago. So I do think that we have our arguments, but I think they're fun and they're part of the show, and kind of gets people. That's how we build the polls, that we do, and people take sides a lot of times just based on who they want to stick up for. I mean, they're non-scientific and they're funny, but I think hopefully we are a good example of how you can do that, and it doesn't have to be the end of the world, and it doesn't have to resort to, going down a rabbit hole that is negative.
Agreed. So speaking of social media, and I saw your tweet about this earlier, let's address the elephant in the room that is the milk crate challenge.
Yeah. I mean, what's there to say? It's the dumbest challenge. I'm like,
it is the dumbest. And I'm gonna ask you a hypothetical question. In your expertise, your experience, your knowledge, let's say what is the worst injury that a person could possibly have by being stupid, besides being stupid?
I don't know, because I used to think that we talk about it when we were back working in the clinic, and you'd think you'd seen the dumbest thing, and then you come to work the next day and there'd be something else to take its place.
Something tops it.
I just think it's human nature to sort of want to try things, even though people have a good idea, like, hey, maybe this isn't the smartest thing to do, but they want to try it anyway. You can get into actually a whole science that exists about people who are more of the daredevil type. When you get into really, like, why are there certain people who are willing to do things that like, why do we have the X Games? Because there are people who really love the adrenaline of some of these events or sports that most of us would never dare to do, right? Because we have something in our agenda that says, that's not safe for me, I'm not going to do it. And then there are other people who, and I think that's why we're drawn to it, right, as spectators, because we want to watch. And that sort of leads to why these challenges like this milk crate challenge become viral, because everybody wants to watch other people do it and then see what their catastrophe is, even though most of us would never do it, because we would know, hey, there's a good chance that I will do that, and there's a good chance that the consequence of failure will lead to something that I don't want, like an injury. But we still want to look. We can't really avoid it. We want to look. The problem I have with that one is it's just because my instinct is, as a PT, is the same reason why when I walk down the street, I'm in an airport, I'm always looking at people's I'm always looking at how people are walking, and my mind starts thinking of, like, oh, that person probably has an arthritic hip and they probably got it from this, and oh, I wonder if they played football and they did. Like, it just happens. That's what happens.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
I think that instinctively I look at the milk crates and I'm like, this is going to, like, you can just see, especially the way they give way, like, that's an ACL. They're going to break an ankle. Some of these guys, where they set up the crates, they're around all these other hazards. And I'm like, they're going to get a head injury. And you start worrying about the more serious injuries. If they fall wrong and they land on their head or neck, do they end up with a fractured vertebrae and a spinal cord injury? I mean, all jokes aside, how awful would it be if somebody did milk crate challenge and ended up with a spinal cord injury and ended up with a wheelchair the rest of their life because of the way they landed on their head? Or if they ended up with a traumatic brain injury and they were not right. And, the people on the flip side can say, yeah, well, then if, you could step off the curb and get hit by a bus and that could happen. Yes, you could, but that's far less likely to happen versus actually choosing to set up the crates and do something where you have very low chance of success. So if they were all set up on a bunch of foam mats in a gym, I don't know that I'd feel that badly about it. But the ones I've seen, that has not been the case. And, let's be honest too. It is a time where in some parts of the country, emergency rooms are basically overflowing. There's a real life pandemic going on. And I have friends who, I stay in touch with many of my medical friends, and even people who work in orthopedics in some areas of the country, when where the COVID-19 cases are elevated, they're being called to work on COVID floors because the staffing is so shorthanded. And so what that means is, for everybody else who comes into the ER, there might not be somebody to see you or take care of you right away. You might not be able to. And so, not to get all serious on that, but I can't help it. I am a healthcare provider. I have been for many, many years. And so those things are very close to my heart. And I think about that when I see things like that happening. I start thinking about all the potential consequences, and it's just part of my DNA.
I get it. If you do something, you work in something, you're just inherently and instinctively paying attention to that or looking at that. It's just second nature. We're going to address this question quickly because you just went into depth about it. But our friend of the show, John Helmkamp, has a question. What is more likely to get torn in the milk crate challenge, an ACL, an MCL, or your Achilles?
I'm going to say an MCL because everything I say, people are going off to the side, right? They're trying to balance, and then their leg goes out, and they end up going off to the side, and that's an easy MCL injury. Achilles probably not, because they're not jumping. If they were jumping crates, maybe. But I think MCL with an ACL and not that far behind. But actually, I don't think it's even those as much as it is like the ankle sprains or ankle fractures. It doesn't take that much if you land wrong. And I think somebody said to me on a tweet today, like, because they were sort of coming back at me about my position on the milk crate challenge by saying, well, I think people know they're going to get hurt if they land awkwardly. And I'm like, well, who is not landing awkwardly? Like,
exactly,
nobody has control of how they're landing. It's not like they can say, okay, I'm going to have like a gymnastics perfect landing here and stick it. They're falling, and so they don't have control. And if they hit the ground wrong or their foot rolls underneath them, that's when they can have those serious foot and ankle injuries, or a head injury if they hit their head too hard.
I watched one. It was a community police officer just being part of the community. Got to about a third of the way up, and they gave way, and the way he like twisted, but the milk crates ended up under him, and I'm like,
yeah, bad.
I'm like, forget being internet famous. I don't want to get hurt because
you're right. Well, you would be in the majority of the normal folk who are having those thoughts before they actually try it. But Rico, just so you know, he's now resorted to going to his toy bin and pulling out something that is louder and squeakier to try and get my attention, because he has not succeeded with the football. So I apologize. We are on. It's like having
so fine.
Rico, come here. He's like, I don't even know what to say. He's just a good boy. Okay, how about you sit here for a minute? He just wants to go get a toy and then take it, and then he shakes it. Yeah, play with me. So I apologize to everybody who's watching who has no interest in what is going on here under the table with the dog. But
they will get over it. They are just fine. If they have a problem with Rico, they got a problem with me. Okay. So since you are hands down above and everybody the most famous injury expert, as it would be, that we've ever had on women fantasy football, or no pun intended for that matter, we would be doing everybody watching and or listening a disservice if we didn't ask you at least one injury question. So what is your look, with your experience, your knowledge on ETN, on his so I keep wanting to call it a Lisa Frank injury, and so then I keep thinking of like neon green leopard prints with puppies and dolphins because I'm a product of the 80s. So what is your outlook on his prognosis for this year and or next year?
Well, I think, this year's done for him. I mean, he's on, they placed him on injured reserve, season-ending injured reserve. So we know that they've already made the decision, no matter what, that he's not coming back. But I think, and I said this on the podcast today, I don't think it's fair. We're seeing some of these injuries happen to young players. Cam Akers tears his Achilles, and people are like, oh, there goes his career. Travis Etienne has, it's a Liz Frank injury, just that is the pronunciation. Travis Etienne has a Liz Frank sprain, and people are like, oh, that's bad. That's really bad for a running. And I try to put myself in because again, I come from a place where I used to rehab these guys, and you know what the athletes are going through is devastating enough to have the injury. But nobody ever got better and came back because they believed a bunch of people who said they never would. And so I think, again, and maybe it's my bias towards trying to be positive, but you can also still be realistic. I referenced a study in the American Journal of Sports Medicine. It was published a few years ago. that said, and it was NFL players specifically, and talked about 90% in that group that they looked at over a certain period of time who were able to return to play in the NFL. Now, you can get into what performance metrics were and time to recover. The problem I have with that is seasonal calendars. In other words, when you get hurt in the year can greatly impact how much time it takes for you to recover. Travis Etienne got hurt in August, but it doesn't matter if he's ready in June. The next football season doesn't start until next September. So when it's documented his return time, it will be 13 months. And that doesn't mean it would have been 13 months before he could play. But if you put him in a study with a bunch of other players, he's going to skew on the long end potentially because it would be 13 months. You see what I'm saying? So some of those stats, when you look at these journal or publications that look at public record, basically what's available publicly, because you don't have access to these guys' medical records. They are going on time frames that are influenced by a seasonal calendar. So I would say take the time frame out of it, but knowing that if all other things were equal, it would be, these are what we consider like 6 month plus injuries. So, there are guys who have come back. There's an NFL player who came back at 12 weeks after this type of injury. It's not recommended, but it was situational, and it was able to do it. But you take a rookie who's a running back who's got a long career ahead of him, and by automatically shutting him down for this year, then there's no temptation to even think about it. If Jacksonville should suddenly find himself in the place of being in a Super Bowl, they're not going to be looking to get Etienne back. But that said, it's a sprain of a significant ligament in the middle of the foot, and the not all these injuries are created equal. So I had tweeted, like, it depends whether it's a stable or an unstable injury, and really that means, is there enough damage that you're getting what they call a diastasis, or a separation between some of the bones of the foot, or is it stable and none of that is showing up? If you're obviously getting displacement, then that's not a normal foot anymore. And then if you don't have stability in the foot, how are you going to be able to walk or run? It comes down to essentially that basic argument. And so if you have an anatomic disruption of what that area of the foot should look like, you have to fix it. And so you put a screw in. Sometimes it's a couple of screws. You allow it to scar down and heal. They sometimes take the hardware out later because it can be a little irritating in that part of the foot. And then it's a matter of recovery to get back to football activity. So there's no reason he can't do great with this. And I would suggest that he will be back next year when the season starts. And sometimes it takes a while to get your top end speed back, but no reason he can't have a great career after this.
Well, and you answered a question of mine, because I was going to ask, what is a Liz Frank? Because up until people started injuring them recently, I had never heard of that.
Yeah.
So
well,
where in the foot is
confusing. It's a little confusing because there's an area of the foot, like in the middle of the foot. So it's the middle of the foot. And then there's an area of the foot that is basically described as the Liz Frank, region. So you can have a sprain of any of these many tiny ligaments, and technically that qualifies. But when most people are referring to it with the type of injury that we're talking about here, it's disruption of this Liz Frank ligament, which is big, thick, strong ligament in the middle of the foot.
That doesn't sound pleasant at all.
No, it's not.
No. So since we are talking to women of fantasy football, and charity is a big component of a lot of fantasy football leagues these days. You have the Scott Fish Bowl, you have Warrior Bowl, you have a bunch of things. And there is a charity league that you are part of, the Pros with Joes. So tell us a little bit more about that. Were you part of it last year? How did you get involved this year? And who are you playing for?
I was. Thanks for asking. I was invited to join last year, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, you're basically playing for a charity of your choice. My charity is donorschoose.org, and I am a big fan of education. I feel like everything that I've been able to do in my life has been the result of benefiting from good education. And so things like early childhood literacy and having access to the proper tools in classrooms is super important to me. So for people who aren't familiar with Donors Choose, it's really cool because teachers from all, and you can pick from anywhere in the country, different classrooms, teachers have projects or needs for their classroom that they're trying to get funds for, because we all know teachers don't have enough money to pay for all the tools that they need. And many of these teachers are working in underserved or disadvantaged communities, and they're spending out of their own pocket to put these things together. So they come up with a project and a budget, and you can actually see your money go to pay for a particular project. And I think there's something very gratifying about that too. You get notes back from the teacher, sometimes from the students. We get notes that say, this is what we did, and you see the picture. So you can actually see your money at work. And I love the fact that they will take from anywhere from a dollar. So no donation's too small, because $1 could go towards a project. And because it's budgeted out, you know exactly how much is needed for each project. So that's the charity. I was partnered, they call it Pros with Joe. So they take somebody who's in the fantasy football industry and somebody else who has bid to partner with you. And I played with a gal named Rachel last year, and we drafted Christian McCaffrey first overall. And so that was not a fortunate start for us. However, we still made it all the way to the playoffs, and we had a good run, and she was awesome. I mean, she was a really, really good player. So
nice.
It was a lot of fun, and we had fun doing it along the way. And so I think it's great. It's a cool concept. And like I said, everything's for a good cause, and it gives people a chance to play with their favorite fantasy football analysts.
That is fantastic. So I'm going to ask you one more time to give the name of that charity, just so people can go do more research and hopefully get involved, because I love it and it sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's donorschoose.org. And actually, if you go to my Twitter feed, you can see, because I tweeted about the Pros with Joe's event earlier today, and you can go, there's a link there that goes to my page. So if you're putting a bid in, that will take you to where you can learn more about the site as well.
That is fantastic. Stephania, thank you so much for joining us. It has been a pleasure getting to talk to you. I have seen you all over Twitter. I know that so many people look up to you, not only for your knowledge, but just the fact that you are great at what you do. And I know a lot of women look up to you as well, because you can hold your own with the boys. I mean, you name dropped Matthew and Field earlier. Like, yeah, those guys. So thank you so much for joining us. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I love seeing more and more women in this space. So it's really important to me. I love that you guys take over this for a week and you're bringing on all these different women. Laura, who you're having up next, is like, I am a fan of hers. We've never actually met, but I think she's amazing. And she does so much to elevate women who are entering the journalism field. So again, I'm really appreciative of all the women who are getting involved in this space, whether it's sports or fantasy football or any gaming, what have you. You can find me at Stephania_ESPN on Twitter, Stephania Bell on Instagram, and, pretty much all over the ESPN during the football season.
All over, everywhere during football season. Do you ever sleep during football season?
Not as much as I'd like. I actually look ahead some days and go, which night is the night that I can go to bed early? So, but it's like, it's great. I wouldn't trade it. We're always super excited when the season starts and super glad when it ends. And, but how lucky am I to get to do what I do for a living? So I wouldn't trade it.
Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we will look forward to watching you and listening to you as the season gets underway.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Bye.
Bye.
So I was just getting ready to call you. It's like Beetlejuice, but I don't need to call you.
That, so
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, I have both of you now. How
Yeah,
lucky am I?
Listen, Josh on the production end is a C+ at best, so I had to.
I
had to
was
step
waiting
in.
for
Listen,
Faith to call me in because that's how this show goes, Joe.
I was getting ready to call you in. Joe, Stephania literally just talked about staying positive, and you come in with the negative. Did you listen to nothing?
I agree, and I find it funny that you talked about healthy arguments and stuff. That Stephania says she has healthy arguments with
Matthew and Field.
With Matthew and Field, not Matthew Berry or Field Yates.
No,
Matthew and Field specifically.
And Field.
And I said in our show chat behind the scenes, I said Josh and I only have unhealthy agreements. So
I'm gonna go on a diet soon. Thanks for that, Joe.
Yeah. No, I loved everything she had to say. I think everything was just perfectly said, and just listening backstage was incredible. Great job, Faith. And now,
Thanks.
jerseys.
Jersey.
Yes, plural. All right, let's get these away really quick because I know Laura is here, and I don't.
That's what I said. Are we doing both now?
Yes, we are going to do both of them now, and we're going to start with which one am I on? Perfect. The Jonathan Taylor jersey.
Woo. Oh,
which John I happen to have.
John Helmkamp wants to know who's that dude with all the gel.
Oh, that would be me. Yeah,
that's Josh.
I happen to. I gotta look pretty sometimes. It's okay.
John, I'll tell you.
We're giving away a Jonathan Taylor signed jersey, and we've got a whole bunch of people. Yeah, right. So this week we raised $550 for the Women's Sports Foundation. So thank you all so much for buying these raffle tickets, so I can give away all of this fun merchandise, and we've got a couple more lined up for next week, so it's going to be fun. So, all right, we are going to spin the wheel, and good luck to everybody that donated.
I see John's name on there, and I'm kind of excited for him.
I know, right?
John being the
John
biggest.
would be excited for John too.
Wow! Yet another
double winner.
Wow. Oh my gosh!
Dennis happened to have won the Davante Adams signed jersey last week. Yeah.
Wow.
And now he gets a signed Jonathan Taylor jersey. So congratulations, Dennis. All right. Now.
And he's donated a lot too. So not even just congratulations on the jersey, just congratulate and thank you for obviously donating all of that. Thank you.
All right. Next we have
101 of last year, and
the 101 for the next 6 years of NFL football.
You got it.
Run CMC.
There you go. Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, you know me.
Signed jersey.
He's holding.
It's very blue. It's a blue evening.
Oh, it's pretty too. It's pretty.
I love the Blue Panthers. That's
I'm very mad that I don't get to keep this for myself. It's very.
It's all for charity, Josh.
I know it's for charity.
I can still be
somewhat disappointed. Let's see who wins it. Roger Salazar. Congratulations,
Roger.
Have yourself a Christian McCaffrey jersey.
Woo.
Awesome. All right, cool. We're going to duck out of here. And Faith, we're going to bring on this next guest. And I'm just going to say right now, since she's listening, Laura, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to be here with us.
So,
can you hear me? Hello.
We can hear you now. Hi, hello. How are you, Laura?
Like the wheel was turning of hosts. Hi, nice to see you all. Hi, Faith.
Nice to see you too. Thank you so much for joining us. And I have to address the dog over your shoulder because that is adorable.
I was making sure it wasn't one of my real dogs, but yes. So even if they are not here, they are here.
Stephania Bell was just on with us, and her dog made his presence known. So your dogs would be more than welcome. They're good. We're friendly. We're friends of dogs here.
You're friends of dogs. I know you are friends of women. I'm happy friends of dogs too. My two favorite things. And for real, Faith, so last year, obviously, we were for the NFL on Fox and for every network, we weren't meeting with NFL teams in the facilities. So every week we would have our conversations by Zoom with coaches and players. And so every week we do this every Friday, every Saturday, or every Thursday. And without exaggeration, right here, my two 100-pound each dogs would fight. And they would wait till the Zooms. They would wait till the head coach came on. And I would sit like this and try to cover them. And I mean, I would be going like this, trying to play it cool. And every time the coaches and players would be like, what is happening? Like, that's intense. So there is a good chance you will see two very rambunctious dogs popping up.
Okay, well, I asked the question of Stephania, so I'll ask it of you as well. What kind of dogs are they?
Rhodesian Ridgebacks.
Okay.
They are bred in Africa to hunt lions. It's the only breed I've ever had, so I'm very partial to them. But it's pretty cool. If you go, a lot of people don't know them in this country, but if you go to South Africa, they're like labs. If you have land, you have a Ridgeback to protect your land. And it's really cool. They travel in packs, so they don't kill the lion. They don't attack the lion, but it's the one breed that is bred to keep, like, almost, they'll work in a pack and they'll tree the lion, or they'll keep the lion at bay until the hunter gets there. So they're very brave and very athletic. And the cool thing is, in the old days, what they were also bred for, the hunter would help them get the lions, and then they would leave them at the huts to protect the women and children. So they are wonderful, couch, lazy dogs. And that's my kind of dog.
That's crazy. I mean, I've heard of them. I've seen them. They actually have a ridge going down their spine of, like, you know, but I never knew that they were bred to herd lions, basically, or keep lions at bay. That is crazy.
They have exactly what you're saying. It almost looks like a mohawk. Both of our guys, Booyah and Cash, we're Nashville. We're very Johnny Cash house. And they do not have ridges. Every litter, there's just one or two that's born without them. So my husband and I are very partial to those guys. They're usually not the ones that are grabbed. So we love our ridgeless Ridgeback.
Ridgeless Ridgebacks. I love it. So you work for the NFL and Fox. You are a reporter. You get to do all of that cool stuff. We hear a lot about how aspiring journalists, as they're starting out, they end up traveling a lot and spending a small amount of time at different stations across the country. So what were some of your favorite stops on your life's journey of journalism, and what is maybe one of the most important life lessons you learned in that period of time?
Oh my goodness. What I would say is, this sounds a little Ted Lasso, but it's very true. And it's very much at this age right now, I say this, every stop I've been on has been my favorite stop, because even the ones that I counted down the days till I got out of there, they were probably the most important stops for me to sit and to listen and to learn. I started in Montgomery, Alabama at a small station there, and was the first woman to be covering sports. So that was a big deal. And then I went to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and then I was in Chicago. So for a Chicago girl, that's a pretty cool thing, covering the Chicago Bulls' second three-peat. So that was a life lesson in a lot of ways. And then from there, I went to Atlanta, where I worked for CNN Sports for about 7 years until the network folded. And I've been in the Fox Sports family ever since. So I've been here for a while. And truly, I would say, when I was in Montgomery, when I was in Chattanooga, and even when I was in Chicago, I just couldn't wait to get to the next place, the next place, the next place. And the biggest lesson I learned through that, in what I try to teach all the young women that I mentor and coach, is be where your feet are. And instead of worrying about the next place, let's just be at this place. And let's wrap our arms around this, because even though I was counting down the days till I left, I now find myself sharing all the good old days stories with everybody, and really realizing how wonderful and how important those years were to my life.
I love that, because it's important to be present where you are. Nothing says that you can't dream about where you want to be or what you want to do in the next 5-10 years, but it's important to be present and to be content where you are, because if you are miserable and are just like, I can't wait to get out of here, I want to go to the next place, it's going to reflect in your work. And people will tend to notice that you just aren't as happy. And it's, again, nothing says that you can't say, this is where I am. I'm happy I'm happy with this. I'm content. but sure, in 5 years, I'd like to be here or be there. That's still being content and dreaming. And I love that every step that you've realized that every stop was your favorite at the time, because it was always the next thing. And I think that's a great lesson about being present.
Someone gave me, in working in life, someone gave me great advice when I was very young in Montgomery, Alabama, and I wanted to get out and I was struggling. And I remember somebody saying to me, the two most important days on the job are your first and your last. And I needed to hear that, because it would have been really easy for me at the end to be bitter, angry, and upset with people and bosses and situations, and kind of, left with the middle finger in the air, and going, I'm out of here, on to the next place. But that really struck a chord with me, and that was really important to me. And I've taken that forever since then, which is, I don't care if it's the first day or the last day. I want to have the same professionalism. I want to have the same attitude. I want to have the same growth. I want to have, I want to have the same energy. And I don't want somebody to be able to tell if it's my first day, my 50th day, my 150th day, or my last day. And sometimes that's a push, and sometimes that's a struggle, right? Especially when you're running to the door. But it was really important. You don't know the people that you're with. I promise, in the small, tiny business that we're in, eventually it all circles back. Eventually the people that you wait to leave show up again. And I try to live my life and try to have built a career knowing that wherever I've been on my journey with people, and if they come back into my life and someone says, what was it like working with Laura? I hope they all give the same answer. And it wouldn't matter if I was happy at that place or not. It shouldn't matter to me, and it shouldn't matter to them especially. So I work really hard on that. I still do.
That's amazing. So you have come a long way from Mobile, from Chattanooga to the NFL on Fox. What are some of your biggest hurdles that you've had to overcome?
How much time do we have? I think I'm sure every time you have women in male prevalent businesses, and that especially is sports, and very much football, but every sport, I think we all probably share the same story in terms of having to overcome doubters and naysayers and people who don't believe in you. And that's hard and challenging. But what I would say the biggest adversity I had to overcome and get through was not believing in myself, and not giving myself a shot. Because I think at some point when you start out, you keep hearing people tell you don't belong. And you keep hearing people say, I don't care what you think. You don't know what you're talking about. And it's hard to not let those voices become your voice at some point. So I would say, I would say the biggest challenge for me all those years was making sure that I didn't lose confidence in myself.
I could totally understand that, because, Lauren says hi. So Stepmom Lauren is my co-host usually, but she was feeling under the weather, and so decided that it was best for her to just relax and take the time to just watch. So she sends her love.
Hi, Lauren. I hope you feel better.
She was so sad that she couldn't be here today.
I am too. I hope you feel better, Lauren.
So you have interviewed a lot of people. You have had Zoom meetings with teams who watched your own personal dogfighting happening. Who have been some of your favorite people to interview?
I can never, ever do this one, because I mean this sincerely. Again, it's a little Pollyanna, but honest to God, it's the truth. My favorite interview is whichever one I'm in. It's just whichever, right? My favorite conversation is just whichever one I'm in at that moment. And I really believe that, because that way you hopefully make that person feel that it's the most important interview you've done. And you want to make sure that you remember the trust that it takes for someone to open up to you, and for somebody to reveal a lot to you. And that takes time, and that takes trust, and that takes building a relationship. And so sometimes it might be somebody whose name that maybe everybody wouldn't know, but it took me 2 years to get them comfortable enough to share their story. And so, honest to God, I've interviewed some pretty amazing people in 30 years in this business, and in a whole lot of sports, not just football, but the Olympics and baseball and hockey and, and NBA and everything. But honestly, I couldn't make a list, because if you asked me that during the season, week 14 this year, I would tell you whoever I talked to that day would be my favorite. And I mean it. I really do.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I believe it wholeheartedly. So I'm going to kind of shift your gears, but also go back to your statement earlier about women in male prevalent like groups, like sports or whatever, broadcasting, whether it's journalism. You started an organization called GALvanize. So tell us a little bit more about it, what it is, what you do, how it got started.
GALvanize started over a decade ago. And right now, the beautiful thing about this time in life is you can join a whole lot of organizations for women, and you can find women supporting women. But I certainly didn't have that growing up in this business, and I really needed that. And I didn't have any women mentors, and I didn't have any women peers who I was connected to and who I was being helped by or helping. And so I got to an age that was a little bit more motherly than judgmental. And I started seeing all these great young women getting thrown into a business very quickly and high up and higher up than I could have handled. And I started watching them getting chewed up and spit out pretty quickly. And that really got me worried for women in this industry. So I became really protective and said, what can I do to help? And that led to just taking 4 months to try to find 20 women who wanted to be in a conference room, and me answering the question, how can I help? What can I do? And over a decade later, we're over 4,000 women, and we're every age, every stage. It started out probably mostly college women who all wanted to be on camera. Now we're 18 years old to almost 50 years old. Wow. And we are in every area of sports. And it's amazing. And so basically I wanted to give them something I didn't have, which was a network of women. And it has grown in all these magical ways. And it's, I don't have my own children, but it makes me feel like I have 4,000 of them. So I hope what they get out of it is a sisterhood. I hope they get a mentor that they can trust and can help them navigate a tricky business. But I also hope that they get a sisterhood that they don't judge and they don't compare themselves to, but they truly support. And I think I know I would have killed for it. I would have killed for it. And yet I'm really glad I didn't have it, because then I probably wouldn't have created it. If I didn't know how rare it was and how much it was needed. So it's one of the things I'm most proud of in my life. I've loved my career, for 3 decades, and I've always been really passionate about it, but GALvanize gave me a purpose to go along with it. And that really, for me, was the magic ingredient I was needing.
I love that. It's, as they say, necessity is the mother of all invention. And so there was something that you didn't have. And so you went out and created it. And I know that's not possible for everybody. And I think what you created is not only amazing, but needed then, and is, regardless of how far we have come, it's still needed now, because when you're alone or a minority in a large group, it's always great to have somebody that you can go to and talk to about the same thing. And whether it's, if you're talking about sports, you can have a conversation about your experiences that are like-minded. And then that I can feel alone sometimes, but I'm not alone. Yeah. And I think that's important anywhere for everybody to know that you're never alone, even though sometimes we may feel like it.
It's really awesome. If I could, I would, hold up my phone right now. My phone is constantly, just at random times in the day, it starts blowing up, and I'll look down and I'll see my GroupMe app just going crazy and be like, why do I have 52 messages? And every boot camp that GALvanize does, there's a GroupMe. So it starts off when I put all these women on, they don't know each other. It's very quiet, that I've got to chime in all the time and fire them well up. And then it can be a boot camp that was together 4 years ago, and suddenly somebody needs help or somebody needs advice. And sometimes there's loveliness where somebody will just get on and tell all the women, I got the job, you guys, and you just watch a thread erupt. But going back to what you said, Faith, it's more of somebody all of a sudden saying, I'm struggling right now. This is my latest rejection, feels like the worst. And I'm feeling like I don't know if I should do this anymore. And does anyone have any advice? And you see the phone just start blowing up with everybody helping each other. And I struggled a lot when I hit 40. That's when, that's kind of when my second act started. I had a lot of work to do when I realized I had nothing to show for my life except a cool job. And it's a very cool job, but that doesn't mean I wasn't depressed and that I needed help and all of that. But I never wanted to share that with anyone because I didn't want to seem ungrateful because I had a great job and everyone kept telling me that. So I didn't want to sound like I was complaining or that I didn't appreciate it, which of course I did. So what makes me so proud of these women is they're able to talk to each other about that and nobody judges it. And nobody's like, hey, but what about your job? It's just, hey, how can I help? What are you going through? And like you said, that's not a sports thing. That's not, that's not, it's not even a male prevalent thing. That's just every man and every woman needs that safe group. And so again, one of the things I hope, that's kind of the code word. If you say GALvanize, the women in the GALvanize know that they can come with truth and they can be vulnerable and they come in peace. And it's pretty awesome. It's not pretty awesome. It's incredibly awesome to be a part of it. And in the mentorship way and in my coach way, but also in a motherly way, just to sit back and watch how they treat each other. It's special. It's lovely.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned your boot camps. Speaking of boot camps, for those who may not know, through your boot camps, you work with a lot of sports teams to help women who aspire to have careers in sports, kind of like get a feel for it, get comfortable with it, all that stuff. Have you found any specific teams or any of that who are just a little more hesitant or are just like, no, we really don't want to do that? And then on the flip side of that, do you have any teams that are like, yes, we love that and bring them all? We want them all.
Yeah. So more of that. It's funny. Where in the beginning, when I had to pitch this to teams, it started off with me having relationships that I built for 30 years. So it wasn't like I came up and introduced myself to a coach and said, "Hey, I'd like to bring 25 women into your building. What can you, open the door?" So they had to trust me and had to, know what I was doing. And in the beginning, I think it was a pitch. I think it was almost felt like a favor, to do that, which was fine. But after the first year, the teams very quickly were like, hey, we get out of this just as much as you guys do, because it helps both sides. It's a lot with respect and empathy and trust and all the things the players and the reporters are working on. And so what's funny is, it's the same window every year. It's May and June that we do the NFL rookie boot camps. And I can only do so many. It's a 2-day boot camp. You have this little tiny window and all the teams do it in the same window. And so what's been really hard and awesome is before we even leave the boot camp that year, the team will say, put us back in for next year. Like, we want to do this every year. So the Atlanta Falcons, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Los Angeles Chargers, those three have been doing it for over 5 years straight, some 7 years. The Dallas Cowboys have done 2, the Buffalo Bills, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody. But there's a list of teams who do it, and I've got a whole other list of teams who want to do it, but the windows are so short, I don't have enough days. So that's the worst, most wonderful problem to have, that GALvanize has been so impactful for the teams that we have a wait list. And so I'm looking to change that this year and hopefully making it that we can do a lot more boot camps with teams. But it's awesome. And honestly, Faith, there hasn't been anybody that hasn't asked me about it or reached out about it team-wise and who's passed. They either do it or they say, can we be on the wait list to be the next one? So it's pretty amazing.
That's fantastic. So that kind of segues into my next question, and it'll have an addendum. So you talked about looking into this next year and trying to increase your boot camps because you just didn't have enough time. So is there anything aside for that aside from that, that's like next on the GALvanize checklist, the to-do list, the big things coming? And how can people watching who either want to get into journalism, either learn more about it to join, or for those of us who maybe getting into it isn't a thing, but we would love to support you? Talk to all of that. That was a lot of stuff. I know.
There's a lot of good stuff. So what I would say is, first of all, if you're not in journalism, does not matter. We really have so many women who are in PR, who are in marketing, who are on camera, off camera. We have agents, we have coaches, we have scouts. We have just women in sports, and we actually sometimes get women who don't know anything about sports, but they're like, this is awesome. Women in sports are cool. Can I hang in this group? So they usually have the most fun out of everybody. They don't know who anybody is. So if you are 18 years old to 50 years old, there's a place for you, which is what I love so much about GALvanize. Because again, I needed it at 22, but I also needed it at 42. I would have benefited from that. So if they want to get involved, all they need to do is go to my website, which is lauraokmin.com, and go to the GALvanize page. And the email's right there, info@lauraokmin.com. And all they need to do is say, I'd like to be alerted for the next boot camps. And that's right now, that's what I have planned for, is the next round of camps will be after the football season. But that being said, I've had some NHL teams reach out. I've had some other organizations reach out. So once in a while, all of a sudden, there'll be an October or November surprise. And as long as you follow GALvanize, that's where you'll find out. I usually do all my announcing there to say, hey, we got a boot camp coming up. Here's the essay, send it in, send your email in today, because we're going to fill up quickly. And hopefully this year there'll be a few of those awesome surprises with some other organizations and other teams that are doing this now. And that's always fun. I always love to be like, all right, I didn't know we were going to do one with this NHL team or with USA women's hockey. And so those are the awesome ones that kind of surprise me every once in a while.
Well, I know that Stepmom Lauren graduated from the University of Missouri School of Journalism, and she's a big St. Louis Blues fan. So if you ever find a spot for the St. Louis Blues, I'm sure she would love to find her way there.
I'm
sorry,
sure
Lauren,
she
I'm
would.
volunteering you.
As a Jayhawk, I would say you had me up until the Mizzou Journalism School. And I actually am about to do a boot camp for KU journalism for all the women there. Cool. So yes, so I'm very excited about that. But absolutely, Lauren is in. If there's any St. Louis Blues boot camp, she's in. But what I would say to Lauren and to you is that you guys are already galvanized. And so when people say, well, what can I do if it's not boot camp season? I'm like, oh, if you follow us and you just start looking at all the women that start going off on social media, and that you support them and you retweet them and you tweet at them and you introduce yourself by a DM and just say, hey, I'm Faith, tell me about GALvanize, or I want to be a part of GALvanize, you'll get in the sisterhood like that. So I'm always like, don't wait for a boot camp. If you reach out in that GALvanize orbit, it sucks you in pretty quickly and loves on you just as fast.
I love that. And speaking of Twitter and Stepmom Lauren, there's a question that Stepmom Lauren asks to all of our guests. And since she's not here to ask it in person, I am here to ask it for her. What is your biggest pet peeve or most annoying thing about social media? It can be philosophical. It can be funny. One of our guests said choreographed dances last year. So anything.
I answer this so differently if it was my pet peeves, but I would answer it differently if it was mine. But I go to DEFCON 1 pretty quickly when it comes to horrible comments and misogynistic comments to my young women. That kills me, because again, as I told you, I struggled when I was young. I struggled with confidence, and I did a lot of first things, which was very cool. And I was always told how cool it was, but that came with a whole lot of fear and a whole lot of confidence issues. And I thank God every day I didn't have social media. Because I don't know if my skin would have been thick enough then. And so I know these young women so much, and I know how hard they're working, and I know their confidence needs building, and I know how much I try to help with that, and the sisters try to help with that. And then I watch somebody just tweet at them about something with their appearance or something about what they think about them or don't think about them. And boy, I go into mom mode really quickly, and I've reached out to a few of the guys before. And, when I hear that somebody's harassing them in any way, my claws come out really quickly because I just know how hard they're working on their confidence and how they might get 50 tweets saying lovely things, but that one person who says something cruel or that one person that says something mean, it affects you and it gets in your head. And so I wouldn't call it a pet peeve. I would call that just something that enrages me in Twitter and in life.
I mean, rightly so. And like you said, especially for younger girls who are trying to get into something, or even those of us like me who are in their mid-30s or even 40s, whatever, you can have 50 people telling you how great you are, how awesome it is, how fantastic of a job you're doing. But for some reason, it's that one negative voice that always seems to be the loudest. It always makes you second guess yourself, second guess your work. You think that you're killing it, but then this one little voice and it's usually somebody you don't know, some random internet stranger who just decided that he wanted to be all cool and macho and go after something ridiculous just because it makes him look cool.
Yeah. It's really true. And it's interesting. This isn't a gender thing, because I'm sure this is just a individual thing. Some people like to be coached up differently, right? Some people get fired up in different ways. I'm one of those that I work best when I'm encouraged. I work best, when I love my boss, my producer, that I want to crush it for you. I'm not good with fear, intimidation, or meanness. And so everybody's very different, but I know even my athletes, my women athletes tend to do better. They want the truth. They want you to coach them hard, but I don't know many women who do better by getting in their head and by telling them, by working their confidence over.
Yeah.
Now on the flip side, my best friend for 20 years was Stuart Scott, and Stuart this is before social media, but Stuart had a drawer in his desk at ESPN in Bristol, and it was just a folder of the worst letters that you would read. And they were all racist and they were all horrible. And I would always say to him, why do you keep those? Like, it got me so upset when he would read them to me or when I saw him. And he always would say, it was a great reminder to him about who he was. It was it helped him. It fueled him. And we would always talk about that because I never understood that. I would always say to him that doesn't fuel me. That puts me in a fetal position, so to read all the ugliness, it put me in a fetal position reading his. So I think everybody's really different how they handle it, but I know it's confidence. Now I know I can read a tweet that's really awful and I'll show it to my husband and he'll get angrier than I will. I'm just kind of I want to show him to be see, it never ends. You can be 50 years old and still get this BS. But I'm better at it now because I know who I am. So I'm really confident in what I do and who I am. And so for somebody who I don't know to tell me something that would affect the way I feel or affect my day or the way I live, I can't even imagine giving them that power. But that took a lot of work. That took till I was 40 plus to get to that sweet spot. And so, it's the hardest thing about social media. There's things I love about it, but boy, that alone makes me just want to delete that app.
And like you said, it takes time. And a lot of times we know something in our head, we know that that's baloney. Maybe they're having a bad day, that we know that we're doing, we know that what they're saying isn't logically true, but sometimes our heart is just but we're going to dwell on that for a second. We're just going to stay here for a minute. So 100%. It's finding that balance and honestly, it's also when somebody comes at you or you're feeling like that, it's great to have a group of people or even one person or a sisterhood to say, hey, I feel like I'm killing it, but this one person came at me like, I'm not crazy here. And so I think it goes back to your 4-year-old boot camp conversations where they're quiet and then all of a sudden it's, hey, I need help.
Yeah,
that's
true. And
classic.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, we get that all the time. Somebody saying like, you guys, look at what I got today. And they'll show this awful message. And for the next 6 hours, you'll see everybody just being like, Faith, you're a rock star. Like, Faith, you're magnificent. You know, you're a stud. You're beautiful. It's just this like wave of love. And who doesn't need that? Like, who doesn't need that every day, but any day? Pick a day when you're feeling down. That's, people always think GALvanize is about being better on camera. And there's a part of that happens, but it's more because by the end of day one, you feel so freaking good about yourself and about all the women around you. I could have them go climb up a tree. I could have them go jump off of a 100-foot pole, and they would do it, and they would do it with a plump. Like they rock it because they feel so good about themselves. So that's the secret sauce. It doesn't matter what people say about you. It doesn't matter what people think about you. But when you really have that confidence in who you are and what you do, that's the unstoppable stuff.
Agreed. And that is a fantastic lesson. Laura, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for starting GALvanize. Thank you for enriching in the future of young women, middle-aged women, women of all ages, and just helping build confidence and courage and all of that stuff. Where can we find you and where can we find GALvanize?
One, I just made a face because I was like, if you called yourself middle age, I was going to go into the screen and just pull you out of that. You are not. And not that middle age is old, but you are not. They can follow me at Laura Okmin, Twitter and Instagram. And my email is info@lauraokmin.com if they want to get in touch with me, if they want to be a part of GALvanize. That's the best way to get me and to have patience with me because, boy, sometimes as I'm getting ready for the football season, I'm not good about getting back to those emails. So to have patience with me. But I would love, love, love to see a wave of magnificent women send emails after this wonderful interview that you just did.
Laura, thank you so much for joining us. It was a delight. And
it was my delight. Thank you.
Good luck
for
this
having
season.
me.
I hope you get all of the rest that you need.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
That's a pro right there, Faith. And anybody who says wishing you good rest and sleep for the football season knows the grind. I appreciate you. Thanks to everybody for having me be on this wonderful show. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh and Joe. Hey, it's like Beetlejuice. I said it 3 times and you came.
I didn't want to abruptly interrupt like last time. I was gonna get yelled at by Josh, so I let him add me to the stream.
That was awesome, by the way.
What a good show.
Thank you.
That was awesome and so very, very insightful from two ladies that have been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
I hope everybody got something out of that because it was great.
Definitely.
I'm just glad that I got to ask Lauren's questions in her presence.
There you go.
And I got Lauren a spot in a St. Louis Blues boot camp whenever it happens.
Big time.
There you go.
Did you notice that she name dropped too? Her best friend was Stuart Scott.
Yes. Yeah. I had a question queued up for, in reference to Stuart Scott, because I know with GALvanize, Laura actually has a scholarship fund named after Stuart Scott. But I felt like kind of holding back because I wanted to make it more about her and less about, the guys in their life. So, yeah.
Well, she segued
maybe next time.
Beautifully. Maybe next time.
All right, we got some raffles next week. Excited.
We do.
Hey, Josh. What are we raffling off next week?
We got the big items this week. We've done tight ends. We've done wide receivers. We've done running backs.
Wait. Hold on.
Not on the docket.
So, hold on. So, does that mean next week is edge rushers?
No.
Linebackers?
Sorry, we don't defensive players. It's quarterbacks, y'all. It's quarterback week.
Discrimination against IDP, and I will not stand for it. Next year it'll be.
It is quarterback week as we head in to week 4, the final week of Women of Fantasy Football, and I have a couple really big time jerseys that we're raffling off, and mind you, these raffles are currently live, and we already have our first $50 that have come in.
Oh, snap.
Courtesy of one Kelly Singh. You can find her at Kelly in Phoenix on Twitter, and she is an absolute gem of a human being. I love her to death, and you should too. So, first up, we have a signed Lamar Jackson Ravens jersey.
The black one, too. That's a nice one.
And
the black one, too.
Former
the
NFL
black jersey's
MVP.
The best Ravens jersey.
Oh, absolutely. I do love the purple ones just because I'm a huge fan of purple. But
it was just the way he said it. The black one, too.
Oh, Jesus.
It's the best Ravens jersey. It's the best Ravens jersey.
And you're going to have a very fun video introducing these as well, coming very soon from one of our guests on this next week's show. But he's often referred to as Daddy.
And we're not talking about Mike.
Josh Allen signed Buffalo Bills jersey.
Oh, dang.
These are up for grabs. You can go to womenoffantasyfootball.com, click on the graphic that says Win Me, and it'll take you to the raffle site where $5, that's it, $5 buys you a ticket for a chance to win a signed Lamar Jackson Ravens jersey and or a Josh Allen signed Buffalo Bills jersey.
Is Josh Allen's wife aware of the jersey raffle that is happening?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay. So, yes, just checking. Just want to make sure that Victoria doesn't miss out on that.
I like how you started with Josh Allen's wife and then you're like, Victoria.
Yeah. Well,
Wait.
I mean, just in case.
Oh, she's very well aware of this raffle.
Yeah, just in case people weren't aware of Victoria and knowing that is why Josh Allen is known as Daddy. Just wanted to.
We don't need to get into people's personal lives, Joe.
Just wanted to do a full circle. That was all.
So Josh mentioned that our announcement video, you may have seen the last couple or so. She's a name that you might recognize her on Twitter, but it's the most interesting name, and I feel like I need to ask her about it next week. It's the one and only Cooter Doodle. You have seen her with her was it a 1-minute podcast?
Petite Pods, yes.
Petite Pods, that's what it is. I was like, it was there. Petite Pods, or watching her playing video games on Twitch. Or, fun fact, she runs the Matthew Berry Fantasy Life social media. Matthew Berry, the same Matthew Berry from Stephania Bell that she name dropped earlier.
That's who Matthew was?
Yeah.
I wasn't
sure. I wasn't sure if you knew that, but yeah.
Okay.
Just thought I'd let you all know. And then our final guest of our Women of Fantasy Football shows in 2021 is Renee Miller, who is a writer with The Athletic and NBC Sports Edge. And she's also a neuroscientist at the University of Rochester. So it'll be interesting to talk to her about head injuries and how all of that comes into play. So I'm excited for that.
So excited for next week.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm excited and sad because it's the last one this year.
Yeah, but then we get to look forward to doing this all over again in 2022.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
Always looking forward. Lauren,
I miss
you. And
you.
We miss you. We had the same thought there. I like it.
I was more focused on Josh looking forward with just one eye coming out of his forehead. So that's his foresight, not his eyes.
It's his third eye.
It's his third eye. It's his
it's blind right now.
Yeah, foresight. So I'm glad Josh is looking ahead with his forehead.
Yeah, or he's a unicorn.
Yeah, the unicorn. Yeah. It's okay. I'm proud of you. Proud of you, Josh.
All right.
I'm proud of all of us for making this happen. So.
I know. This is great.
On behalf of myself, Faith, which is at FF_Leap of Faith, this one over here, Joshua Hudson at the one Hudsonian, this one over here,
point.
Joe Zolo at Joe_Zolo, and our missing co-host, Stepmom Lauren at Stepmom Lauren. Thank you for joining us tonight. Stephania and Laura were amazing, and I don't know what I'm going to do for the rest of the night because that was the highlight of my day. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Toodles.